Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's Football Show on this special tribute to Lisbon Lion and Celtic's greatest ever captain, Billy McNeill, who sadly passed away in the early hours of this morning. There's no doubt about how highly he's regarded among the Celtic support. You only have to look at the start of the Celtic walkway to see the legacy of the great man in bronze holding up the European Cup. On this special Billy McNeill tribute show, we'll hear from Bertie Auld, his teammate, a little later on. But our three guests in the studio all can recall some great stories about Billy McNeill. Archie Macpherson, who was there to see him lift the European Cup in 1967. Hugh MacDonald, with great memories of the great man on many an occasion, lifting every domestic honour. And a man, our very own Alan Ruff, who can brag about the fact that Billy was a good judge of a footballer, because he signed you, Ruffy, all those years ago in 1988.
Yeah, he certainly did. I got the call when I was playing in America at Orlando to come back and play for Celtic, and there was no questioning me ever saying no to that. You know, when Billy McNeill speaks to you, you know you want to go and join the club. And when I came over, it was everything I thought it would be. You know, we all know he's a legend, and I always say, when we talk about managers coming into a club, respect. I think respect is something that you had in abundance, and you knew when you walked into that dressing room, you knew if he was going to say anything, you'd be listening to every word that he said, and he was a fantastic leader.
Archie, you more than anyone have spanned the decades of Billy's career as player and manager.
You know, when I look back on him, it's almost as if we grew up with him. I remember when he started playing with Celtic, as far back as that, when I started out reporting games and so on. So my career paralleled his in a kind of ways. I developed through broadcasting, so he was developing as a player, then on to manager, and of course later he joined me as a broadcaster and became a co-commentator with me over many years, actually, including particularly the World Cup in 1982 in Spain, where we did all the World Cup games, including the very famous one, Scotland against Brazil in Seville. And I got to know him better, I think, then than I had previously, because there's always a divide between the media and the manager. Yes, you get to know them to a certain extent, but there's no cuddling, that's for sure, especially when he was a manager, where we had some fiery exchanges from time to time. But eventually I travelled the world with him, and I regarded him eventually as a friend.
I think when you look back, everybody automatically, Hugh MacDonald, looks at that iconic moment where he's lifting the European Cup. And, you know, when you get a moment like that, so many people will remember you because of the stature of that tournament.
Yeah, but he was, of course, so much more than that. You know, he was the rock on which Jock Stein built Celtic. You know, and when you think about it, Billy was part of a very unsuccessful Celtic team. People forget that now. And at 1965, when Celtic broke the drought and Jockstein embarked on this great flood of trophies, it was Billy that scored the goal that day in the cup final against Dunfermline, winning 3-2, one of his almost trademark headers. So he was central to so many great Celtic moments, not just as a player as well, of course, but later as a manager, and bringing about the double in the centenary year, and always as an ambassador for the club, whether he was an official ambassador, whether he was not an official ambassador, he just was Mr. Celtic. He was the kind of guy who went out and represented the club at so many functions, unofficially and officially, and was the face of Celtic.
Well, as you can imagine, over the next few hours and over the next few days and weeks, there are many thousands of Celtic fans that will be heading to the Celtic Walkway to show and pay their respects to the great man Billy McNeill. Our reporter Gabriel Antoniazzi is out there.
Here next to the statue of Billy McNeill outside of Celtic Park, fans have been gathering more and more each hour to pay their respects after the sad news of Billy McNeill's passing, aged 79, after a long battle with dementia. McNeill won 31 trophies for Celtic as a player, captain and manager. He made 790 appearances, which is more than anyone else in the green and white, and he is fondly remembered as Caesar, the first ever person from the UK to lift the European Cup back in 1967. He'll of course be sadly missed by many people throughout Scotland and beyond. I spoke to a few people earlier.
Well, he epitomised everything that the Celtic family are. He is Celtic, he's Mr. Celtic, he's the linchpin of the family, so he meant a hell of a lot to us.
You see what he contributed to this club, and these days Celtic man just expanded about a bit by a lot of people, but this man truly was a Celtic man.
So I'm only 28, but you grow up with it, didn't you? It's just your family, obviously, and it gets passed down. It's just a sad day.
Of course, McNeill was captain of the European Cup 1967 winning side, and Lisbon Lion Bertie Auld told us how he's feeling after losing a teammate and a friend.
He was a super footballer, outstanding. I met him when he was 17 years of age, and he progressed tremendously. If there were a better centre half in the world, I promise you, I never played with him, or I never ever seen them.
The tributes and flowers are only expected to increase over the next few days, in what is a very sad day for Celtic and everyone involved with Scottish football.
Yeah, Bertie Auld there with an emotional tribute. This must be the most difficult period, I think, for guys like Bertie Auld, the Jim Craigs, the John Clarks, to see their leader and look back over that. And one by one, the Lisbon Lions, sadly, are lost to us.
Yeah, this gradual erosion of what was a great phalanx of footballing ability. I remember Billy once saying to me, he regarded the pre-Lisbon period, when they went to America, as one of the most important things that Steen ever did, because it got them to bond. Because the kind of mercurial way that they played instinctively. When you think back to it, it was almost as if they didn't have a game plan, paradoxically. They just made it up themselves as they went along, and most of it was in an attacking mode. For example, they were, in the famous Inter game, they were against one of the most disciplined defensive teams in the history of the game, relying on breakaways and so on, the great Catenaccio defence. And here we had this very youthful looking side going against them inspirationally, moving the ball about, and the sheer pace of the way Celtic played that day. I have to say, and we've been talking about the Vojvodina game, or at least I have with other people, that was an easier game than the Vojvodina game. The final was Celtic won that game comfortably. They really did. Okay, it was narrow, 2-1. You had them going in the lead, so there was that degree of tension about it, and it took a great goal by Gemmell, of course, to suddenly enliven the hordes who were there. But actually, Celtic won that game reasonably comfortably.
I agree. I mean, I think Vojvodina was a crucial game. I think Steen said that all the time. They were the strongest team. Remember, this was a time when it was Yugoslavia, so it was all the Balkan nations, the Montenegrins, the Serbia, the Croatia, Bosnia all together in Yugoslavia, so it was a very, very strong team. They were the Yugoslav champions, and it was Billy that did his trademark header that night. I think, one of the things that it was interesting hearing Bertie talk about it is one thing, and it gets understandably lost when you're talking about a hero, a captain, this good-looking, handsome man, and the pictures of him lifting cups, and the manager, not only of Celtic, but of Aberdeen and Clyde and Aston Villa and Man City, is what he was like as a player. He was an excellent player. He was a very good football player as well.
Yeah. We continue our tribute to Billy McNeill. We'll obviously look at some of the statements coming out from not only here in Scotland, but right across the globe. His loss has been felt throughout the football community, and we'll get more stories from the three guys here in the studio. Of course, Alan Ruff, Hugh MacDonald, and Archie McPherson sharing a few memories of Billy McNeill. Welcome to PLZ Soccer. Why not join the football family and download the PLZ app? You'll get all the latest Scottish football news and up-to-date news on English and world football. There's also a feature here where you can record yourself talking about your favourite team. If we use the video, you could feature on our football show. For all the latest news in Scottish football, download the PLZ Soccer app in the App Store and in Google Play. Come and join the football family on PLZ Soccer. Billy McNeill sadly passing away in the early hours of the morning at aged 79. When you look back on his haul of medals, it is impressive. 31. And over the course of the last few hours, so many people have been paying tribute to him, not only as a player, but as a man as well. And no surprise, the first statement we are going to read is from the family, because it was the sad news coming out of the family early this morning that saddened so many people. It is with great sadness that we announce the death of our father, Billy McNeill. He passed away late last night, surrounded by his family and loved ones. He suffered from dementia for numbers of years and fought bravely to the end, showing the strength and fortitude he always has done throughout his life. We would also like to note our love and appreciation to our mother Liz for the care, devotion and love she gave to our father throughout his illness. No one could have done any more. Whilst this is a very sad time for all the family, and we know our privacy will be respected, our father always made time for the supporters. So please tell his stories, sing his songs, and help us celebrate his life. And that is what you call a class press release that sums up, sadly, when you think about it, Archie, a man who was a colossus, a man who would epitomise what you would look for in a captain if you were drawing him on a piece of paper, but suddenly dementia reduced him to the point where everybody was filled with sadness.
In his prime, when I was with him, especially travelling the world with him, particularly Europe and World Cups and so on, you would never have thought he had achieved what he had achieved. I'm trying to find the right word. Modesty doesn't describe it. It's just a reluctance to relive some of these triumphs. And he was so modest, almost to a fault. And I remember one night, for example, it was, I think, a couple of nights before Scotland played Brazil in Seville. We dined with the famous Jimmy Hill of the long chin and the dyspepsia about Scotland and so on, whom Billy ribbed mercilessly last night because Jimmy had complained he hadn't been in the recent Queen's Honours list for a knighthood. In any case, he said to Billy, going back to the Vojvodina, it's always a bit fluky to score a goal in the last minute, and Billy took it in full stride, of course, then, but very calmly explained the circumstances about which that goal came about. But you never got any braggadocio from him. He was a guy, in fact, I think I said it earlier, when he talked to me every now and again about Lisbon, it was almost as if they'd been on a family outing for a picnic. And on return, they got a memento to take with them. You know, it was as simple as that.
The strange thing about it, I mean, he's won this European trophy. He's won so many other domestic honours, Hugh. I mean, I take great pride. We all have a connection to him. I take great pride in the fact that having interviewed him on more than a few occasions, I always opened up with, and here comes my other fellow Our Ladies High School teammate. It was that pride at knowing you were at the same school and there was a link there. But if you were in his company, as Archie mentioned, you never felt as if you were in any way beneath him. He was a fan. He made you feel as if you were part of it.
No, it's actually the opposite. He had a strange way, and I remarked upon this a few years ago where I'd left. I'd been at a dinner and I was sitting between him and his great mate Mick Jackson. They were always attached almost by an umbilical cord, but this night I separated them by sitting between them, and I actually walked out that night thinking I was a legend, because that's the way he spoke to you. He was always interested, but what do you think? And what do you say? Billy, it doesn't matter what I'm thinking. You're the and I thought that, and Archie said that it was a deep, almost a real true humility, you know, almost of a spiritual quality that he had, where he knew what he'd done.
It affected the family as well, because I remember Peter. I went to interview him prior to an Old Firm Cup final. I can't remember which one it was. It doesn't matter. And I filmed the interview. We'd filmed John Gregg in his house, filmed Billy in his house, and I said to him, "Well, how about showing us the medal?" The medal. He couldn't find it. Neither could Liz. And he discovered his daughters had it with the other coins, using them as currency to play shops with the next door neighbours in the garden. In other words, the family didn't have their head in the clouds.
You see, Ruffy, they're just the same as you. You and your shirts up in a bag up in the loft. It seems to be the way with footballers.
Yeah, I think it is. And just seeing the statement there, and Billy was the first one to, when I was there, every Friday, he knew what the fans' worth were to the club. And he never forgot the fans. And every Friday he would come into the dressing room after training and he'd have a pile of requests for less fortunate fans who were in hospital or some in the house or something. He always made a point of the players always took a part in visiting somebody in the hospital or in the house, and the players bought into that, and I think that's why the fans loved them.
And the last memory I think I have is only in the last 6 months, actually, when I hosted an event to commemorate the 1988 centenary side, and every one of that team absolutely adored him. I mean, they'd gone up, what a lot of people don't know is a lot of that team would regularly go up to the hospital to see him. And they all got together before the event started and got a photograph with him. And it just meant so much to them. You know?
Well, he's precious because I think he's the last of his kind, to be perfectly honest with you. A devoted lover of the club, schoolboy to Lisbon, Lion, all the way through. Didn't deviate 1 inch from that path that he was on. And had a stature and a leadership which I think is so lacking in life in general, to be perfectly honest with you, that you say to yourself, we're passing away from something that was really special.
And I agree with you totally, and it's when you go down to your base thing, down to the fan, the pure fan, when you strip away that you're a newspaper man or you're a writer, and you were proud that he was your captain. You were proud that Billy McNeill was a Celtic man, and that will never leave.
A statement coming out from the Celtic interim manager as well to reflect on the sad passing of Billy McNeill. This is from Neil Lennon. Such sad news, and I want to send thoughts and prayers to Liz and all the family from myself and all the backroom staff here at the club. When you think of Celtic and our incredible history, Billy McNeill is always one of the first names that comes to mind. He was our greatest ever captain and one of our greatest ever players, and along with his teammates, achieved historic things for Celtic in the 60s and 70s. As a Celtic supporter, to get the chance to play for the club, captain the team, and finally to become manager is something that dreams are made of. The fact that I've achieved all three is something that I really appreciate, and the fact that I'm following in the footsteps of a legend like Billy McNeill makes me truly lucky. this is more than a club with Celtic known throughout the world, and it is because of people like Billy McNeill that this is the case. He was a giant of the game, a true Celtic legend, and someone that we will all miss. And off the back of that, the Rangers Football Club have released a statement, I think, and it sums up the west of Scotland. And of course, sometimes we look at the badness, the bitterness between fans, but this coming out from Rangers, the directors, players and staff of Rangers Football Club are today saddened to learn of the death of Celtic legend Billy McNeill. Mr McNeill passed away last night at the age of 79, having fought a brave battle with dementia in recent years. He served Celtic Football Club as both captain and manager and was a true leader both on and off the pitch, always showing outstanding respect and conducting himself with great dignity. Everyone at Rangers today sends their condolences to the family and friends of Mr McNeill, and none more so, I think, Archie, than John Gregg, because they had a great rivalry, but they also had a great friendship.
Yeah, they were pals. They understood. I remember when Rangers were going through one of their recurring problems where they were winning nothing, Celtic were romping all over them. And Billy said John Gregg kept Rangers. He kept Rangers alive. It was John Gregg. It was a one-man club at that stage. And Billy admired that about him. Because if they hadn't had a leader on the park and off the park like Gregg, Rangers at that period, I can't remember the exact period it was, because I remember a Scottish Cup final at Hampden in which the Celtic supporters actually cheered a Rangers goal.
Gregg scored, yeah.
Gregg scored the goal because they were so pathetically weak in opposition. And Billy at that time was saying it was Greggy that kept them going.
If you could, tough one, can you think of one word that sums him up, Ruffy?
Oh, just legend for me.
I'll take two. Greatest Celt.
Archie?
Outstanding man.
I'm happy with two as well. I'll accept it all. Thank you very much to our three guests in the studio. It doesn't get any better. Alan Ruff, Hugh MacDonald and Archie McPherson for sharing those wonderful memories of a man whose legacy will live on at Celtic forever. When people walk past, they will always know he was the first British man in the first British team to win the European Cup. Billy McNeill, rest in peace.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.